And really appreciate Pastor Isaac and what he's been doing. Just really, really good teaching. There's turning points, things that we can do, something that's going to change who we are from one thing to the next. And that's what we're looking for in all of our lives. But each of us are affected by turning points. Sometimes we are the ones who come along somebody else and assist them in helping them turn in some way, either towards God or away from something that they shouldn't be doing, or somehow helping them to make a better decision. And we get to be part of that. So as we look at the stories of turning points, we want to think about not just the person who's turning, but also those who might participate in helping that process as well. But as we know in life, each of us need to make choices. And there are big steps in our life. If we look back at our life, we can see that this was a turning point that helped us to move in the right direction. Sometimes that turning point was a turning point where I turned and said, you know what, God, I cannot do life on my own. I cannot. I just have no ability to make all of these things work out. I am not able to do this on my own. I need you. And we came to the place where we were willing to admit that, and then we started to surrender our lives to God, and we turned towards him, and it changed our lives. I know for me, it changed my life. But even as a Christian, even as a follower of God, there are seasons in my life where I wasn't necessarily making the right choices, and I needed some people to come around me to kind of help me see that, and then I saw I needed to turn even in those times. So turning points can be all different types of turning points in our lives. This morning, I want to talk about something that none of us want to admit to. You ready? It's called denial, okay? Whoever admits to denial, you only admit to it after you found out you were denying it. But while you're denying it, you don't admit to it, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be in denial, right? So there you go. Living in denial. There's a story that's told on the Living Free website. It's a true story about Alex, who grew up in a very average middle-class suburban home with hardworking parents. And as a senior in high school, he bought a brand new sports car, paid cash for it. Right. His parents never asked him, hey, son, where did you get the money to buy that car? Alex had been running a drug-selling operation out of his bedroom all through high school, and yet his parents knew nothing of it. Alex deceived his parents, hiding from them his illegal business venture, but his parents also deceived themselves, ignoring some major signals. Hello, Lamborghini in the front yard, okay? Just saying, ignoring some major signals that was not well with Alex refusing to believe that their son could be involved in selling drugs. The truth came crashing down on the family when Alex was arrested and charged with selling drugs. Yeah. Jesus warns us, watch out that no one deceives you, he says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 4. Watch out that no one deceives you. But who deceives you the most? It's probably not someone out there who's your enemy. They don't usually deceive you as well. Now, sometimes you get tricked by your enemies, but most of the time we have our guard up against our enemies, right? And sometimes we get deceived by our friends or those who are closest to us. But actually, the worst kind of deception, it comes when we deceive ourselves. By far, the most common of deceptions is self-deception. And so when we deceive ourselves, we are then living in denial. So if you have your pens and you have inside your bulletins, there's a sermon outline. You can follow along. And if you need a pen, raise your hand up, and one of our ushers will help you get a pen. But here's the deal. Denial equals self-deception. Can we say that together? Denial equals self-deception. Now, many of us do not like to admit that we've been deceived by ourselves, okay? But if we're honest, we watch it all the time in others, right? We see it all the time. One of the times I was driving with Nathan and Bartley and Ted, we were going to a special meeting somewhere in New York State, and we were coming from Toronto, and so we were driving down, and I'm walking way out of the camera site, so apologize for that. So we're walking down, and we were driving along, and I was driving the van, and all of a sudden, we were going to take a shortcut. We decided to take this Route 6 instead of another route we were supposed to take, Route 20, I think. And so we decided to take Route 6, but we weren't clear. This is long before GPSs and all this other stuff. We weren't clear which direction we were really going, because we were kind of driving through mountain passes, and by the time we got to Route 6, we had already done this 17 times, and so we weren't sure if we were facing north, south, east, west, and we thought we were supposed to take a left, and so I was convinced it was a left turn. So off we go on our left turn. About a half an hour later, okay, I'm looking around thinking, well, this is well, that's not. And the guys behind me going, Phil, I think. I'm like, oh no, we're good. We keep cruising along. About an hour later, okay, we see a sign that tells us something about heading in the west, and we're trying to head east. And we were closer to this town in the west than we were in the east, and we were closer by an hour now. Wow. And all along the way, there are like little signs. Even things like the sun that can tell you which direction you're going. Just little things like that, that can tell you what's going on. But I was so convinced that I was going in the right direction that I couldn't hear the signs, couldn't hear the people in the back seat going, hey, Phil, I think, hey. But when we saw the road sign that clearly said we were almost an hour away from where we started in the wrong direction, it's like I couldn't deny any longer we were going the wrong way. And so sometimes when we're in denial, we kind of have to really kind of see it clearly so that we can actually turn. This morning, the story that we're going to tell this morning is about David and the prophet Nathan. So David was a king in Israel, and I want to tell you the background before Nathan comes to see David is one of these big stories in the Bible. You probably heard about it. It's called David and Bathsheba. So Bathsheba was a lady. She was the wife of a Hittite who was part of David's army. And so he wasn't a Jewish guy, but he was still in the army of Israel, and he was fighting with David to help protect the land. But the Bible tells us that, and here he says that David stayed back while the armies went out. And so the king is supposed to go out with his armies to go fight battles back in the day, and the king was hanging back in the palace having a good time. And while he was looking over his balcony, there was no running water back in the day. Well, I guess, some people figured that out, but most people didn't have running water. And so this lady happens to be Bathsheba, happens to be Uriah's wife. She was taking a bath on top of her roof, which sounds weird to us because we have roofs like this. But if you go to the Middle East, they have roofs like this. And so she's not doing anything wrong. She's just taking a bath in a very private place on top of her roof. But the king, who's in the palace, has an interesting vantage point on this, and he sees her, and he wants to sleep with her. And so he invites her secretly to come to the palace, and they have their time together. And so what happens is, this is all obviously under hush-hush, right? No one kind of knows except obviously a couple of the servants and whatever. So now this terrible thing is taking place. Now the king, by the way, King David had 8 wives, just so you know, and he had the ability as king to basically say whichever maiden he could ask to be his wife. In that culture, it seems weird to us. I certainly wouldn't want 8 wives, so I'm trying to manage one. But, and she's trying to manage me. So, but, how do you do 8 wives? I've never always asked myself that question, how would you do that? Like, that sounds like death. Like, like I can't even manage that. But first of all, after they get done fighting with each other, then they all look at you. And then what do you just run, right? But anyways, so David had lots of wives, and he also had opportunity to have more wives if he wanted them. And yet now another man's wife, he sees her, and he desires her, and then he finds a way to get her to come to him, and they have this relationship, which is wrong. Now, what's interesting is it doesn't stop there. You think, okay, now he's done this terrible thing. He's going to feel really bad, because we know if we look at the Bible, David is a really good guy. Like, if you look at the scripture, the Bible says David is a man after God's own heart. Here's a good guy who's made a really bad decision. So you're thinking, okay, he made a bad decision. He's going to go make this thing right. So what does he do? He brings Uriah back from the battle. And then, because of the king, you have this very large table. Well, it's not just one table. There's lots of tables. But in the banqueting hall of the king, all of the servants eat with him. And so he has Uriah come and sit at the head table with him when he's supposed to be at war, fighting with his buddies, his band of brothers. And he gets Uriah drunk, thinking that Uriah is going to go home and sleep with his wife, because we find out that Bathsheba is now pregnant. This is a problem. How do you cover it up? All right, kind of got some evidence going on here, and then it doesn't know what to do about it, and there's a time clock on that evidence. And so what do you do with this time clock? And so instead of admitting you've done something wrong and dealing with the consequences, what he does is now he brings Uriah back home, and he gets Uriah drunk, so Uriah would go back home and sleep with his wife. But Uriah is this soldier. He's like, my buddies are suffering out in the battlefield, and he sleeps at the front doorsteps of his house. He doesn't even sleep in his house on his own bed. He's like, if my buddies are sleeping on the ground, I'm sleeping on the ground. The contrast between David and Uriah is unbelievable in this story. So now David doesn't know what to do with himself because Uriah is actually acting like someone with character, and David's acting like a complete fool. And David now is, instead of now repenting and saying, Uriah, we have a problem here and what I've done is really wrong, no. He sends Uriah back to the battle. He asks for his captain Joab to come back. And he says to Joab, when you go to attack the city, when you get close to the wall, pull all the soldiers back except Uriah. A death sentence. He murders Uriah so no one can find out about this tryst that he's had with his wife. It kind of gets bad to worse. Can we agree? Like, okay, adultery is terrible, but murder, how many think that might be a little higher on the scale of terrible? Like, this is not good. And so now we've got adultery, we've got cover-up, we've got, deception, we've got lewdness, we've got drunkenness, and now we've got murder. And so now we find that David has now that Uriah is dead, he's taken Bathsheba as his wife. So somehow we can conceal the fact that she's pregnant, the baby happens to be 6 months old after they got married. I mean, how does, whatever. So anyway, he's trying to figure this out. But he thinks he's got it solved. Uriah's dead. He's got Bathsheba. Everything's cool and copacetic in the palace. And we pick up the story where Nathan, who is a prophet from God, and his responsibility is to tell David what's true. And so we find out, Nathan comes in. We look at the text here in 2 Samuel and chapter 12, 2 Samuel chapter 12, we see in verse 1, it says, now the Lord said to Nathan, the Lord sent Nathan to David, and when he came to him, he said, there were two men. So now Nathan's going to tell a story to help David understand something. There were two men in a certain town, one rich and one poor. The rich man, verse 2, had a very large number of sheep and cattle. But the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it. It grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup. I don't know if I would do that, but okay. Drank from his cup and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man. But the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who came to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who came to him. Now, how wrong is that? Like, that's evil, isn't it? Like, that's evil. And David gets ticked off. Look at verse 5. David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for the lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. And look what Nathan then says to David. Nathan said to David, you are the man. Can you say it together with me? You are the man. See, when we're living in denial, we can't even tell when people are talking about us. We don't even have a clue what's going on. In fact, we're all justice-oriented against people who are behaving the same way we are. That evil person who's doing terrible stuff like that, taking someone's special thing, I can't believe they would do such. They should be hung. Yeah, they should. You are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you, your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah. And if this was not been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with a sword, took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. Now, therefore, the sword will never depart from your house, because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own. This is what the Lord says. Out of your own household, I'm going to bring calamity on you. And then down to verse 12. You did it in secret, but I will do this thing in broad daylight before all Israel. And then verse 13. Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. David said, oh no, that wasn't me. Oh, you can't tell me that. No, David said, I have sinned against the Lord. And then Nathan replied, the Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. Verse 14. but because by doing this you have shown utter contempt for the Lord, the Son you bore to you will die. Wow. That's an amazing story, isn't it? People say the Bible's boring. I don't think they've read it. There's some crazy stuff, man. And these are true stories. This has really happened. This is David. And what do we take away from a story like this? What are some things that we can kind of learn? I bet already as you've heard the story, and some of you have known the story before, as you think about it, you go, oh, I think I see some things, and the Holy Spirit's already at work in your life. When we talk about denial, there are many things that we can deny. We can deny there's a God, even though everything around us is so amazingly complicated and complex and so ordered. There's no other rational, reasonable answer to what life exists without God. But we can deny that. We can deny that this has happened, or we can make a bad decision, and we can pretend it didn't happen, and we can keep covering it up and covering it up. There's a lot of things we can deny. My wife and I are going through something right now where many of you have heard that Beth has come down with cancer, and she's told me I got permission to talk about this, and she said, why don't you use this story? And I said, well, that's pretty heavy. I said, well, everyone knows, so might as well talk about it. You know, she started to feel signs that something wasn't right, and so she went to the doctor. Then the doctor looked and said, hey, you better go get that tested. And then we got it tested, and we came back, and we saw the doctor to see the test on Tuesday of last week. And the doctor says, yes, you have cancer, and we're going to have to do surgery. Now, I don't know about you, but I was not happy with the doctor, okay? Because the doctor didn't have any empathy whatsoever. Yeah, and we're going to have to do this and this and this and this, and yeah, yes, and this is what's going to happen. And he was just like, matter of fact. I'm thinking, this is my wife, and you just told her you're just going to have to cut pieces out of her body. You're going to have to give her cancer. She's going to have treatment, and she's going to have surgery. Like, what? Can you at least, like, cry a little bit, or, like, have a little something in your face that says, I'm sorry? Or no, he's like, no, and this is the procedure. You start getting technical with all the I'm like, what's going on here? And we can sit there in denial and act like this really didn't happen and it's not true. And we can decide not to have surgery, and we can pretend it's not going to happen. And what's going to happen with that? I mean, right now she's not feeling any pain. She doesn't really even feel any discomfort. In this moment, guess what? While we live in denial in this moment, everything's okay. But if we don't act on this, if we don't take action and take the truth of what is and walk forward with it, well, she could die, right? This could kill her. We live in an awesome part of the world and an awesome part of history where it doesn't have to anymore, right? Like, this is the wonderful part about it. But if we keep living in denial, guess what? It will. So what are some things that we can learn about denial? Okay, here's some takeaways. I want you to write some of these down. They'll be on the screen. When in denial, okay, when we are in denial, okay, we can't see it. I want you to say that. When you're in denial, ready? Say it together with me. We can't see it. Why do you keep telling me? Has anyone ever seen that nail video? Okay, you go back in YouTube later, probably some of you are going to do it right now. This nail video in the woman's head. And she cannot see it. And every time the guy mentions it, she's like, stop it. There's no nail in my head. And then she's like, I got this pain right here. He's like, yeah, it's a great video. You got to watch it. You know, when we are in denial, we can't see it. But here's the point that you really need to know about it. Everyone else can see it clearly. Like the king, you know, the emperor has no clothes, right? Everyone else knows he's naked. He thinks he's like wearing this wonderful outfit that this guy made for him. Like, when we're in denial, we can't see it, but guess what? Look around. Everyone else can see it. And we need to wake up to that. It's an important point. If people start talking to you about something, don't go, oh, shut up, I don't want to hear it. And everyone keeps saying that, but it's not true. Well, if everyone keeps saying it, can you wake up with me? Like the guys in the back seat, oh, it's good. We're good. We wasted 2 hours on the road because I wouldn't listen to these guys, because I thought for sure I was going in the right direction. I wasn't even trying to do something wrong. I didn't have bad intent. I wasn't an evil person. Sometimes what we're denying isn't necessarily terrible. Sometimes it is. We have the short view. See, when we're in denial, okay, when we are living in denial, we have the short view, and we keep covering over our sin. When we're in denial, we have a short view. We're not thinking about the long view. We're thinking about the short view. We're naive, and we keep covering over our sin. I have done this hundreds of times. One of the key stories, I've told you this story many, many times about my situation when I was in the military and I started to date this girl, and all of a sudden it got terrible. And you guys have heard that story before, and if you haven't, you can come ask me about it later. But we can keep covering over the things that we've done. David keeps, instead of repenting, he says, okay, let's bring Uriah back. Okay, let's kill him. Okay, let's take his wife and marry her. Maybe they'll never know because here comes the baby and we got married, right? So, we keep kicking the ball forward as opposed to seeing the big picture, as opposed to stepping back and going, I'm a complete fool right now, and I'm hurting a lot of people. When we live in denial, we need to understand that we have the short view and we keep covering over our sin. The third point is really important. We create greater consequences the longer we stay in denial. Can't you see that with David's story? Man, if he would have repented earlier on, okay, he committed adultery, it was terrible, and it's wrong, and he would have been punished. But how many think it would have been better than Uriah dying and everything else happening? Like, unbelievable. You know, if Beth and I keep on denying that she has cancer, what's going to happen to her? When we live in denial, the longer we live in denial, the more severe the consequences become. We need to grab a hold of that. We need to own that. We need to actually wake up to that. Because if we don't want these terrible consequences, maybe we need to start listening to the signs around us and the people who love us, who are trying to say, maybe they say hard things we don't want to hear. But how many would think that we're happy the doctor said some hard things to us the other day, even though we did not want to I did not want to hear them. But I'm really glad he told me. And I'm glad that there were other doctors and nurses that were proactive in helping her expedite all of the treatments and all of the things she had to do to find out the truth about it. There are a lot of people who care about you. Maybe you're here this morning and you haven't decided to follow Jesus. You've been thinking about it for a long time. And you've been kind of putting it off. I'm here to tell you that there are probably lots of people who are praying just for you. They've invited you to church. They've invited you to a Bible study. They've wanted you to come to know Christ. But you just, I don't need that right now. I don't need God right now. We keep pushing him off. But you know what? Denial, the longer we wait in denial, it just gets worse, not better. So we create greater consequences the longer we stay in denial. When in denial, my last point on this section is this: we often can see the same sin clearly in others. I remember, this is not quite about denial, but it's about just life, how life works. I remember I bought a white Ford Tempo back when I was in college. And I bought this white Ford Tempo, and I had never even thought that I liked Tempos before. I grew up in a small rural community, a farming community, and we all were like Chevrolet people. Like, that was the deal. Like, when you grow up in small towns, you kind of have this, you can't be, it's kind of like growing up here. You're either a Seattle Seahawks fan or you're going to be killed by being a Patriots fan. That kind of, so it's like you kind of grow up in an environment where you kind of pick your teams. And so for some reason I grew up with, we picked Chevrolet, not Ford. And so all of a sudden, but I could only afford a Ford Tempo. I couldn't afford a Chevrolet. And so I bought this cheapo $1,500 Ford Tempo when I was in college. And now all of a sudden, I saw all kinds of Ford Tempos on the road. Like, I could see Ford Tempos everywhere. I drove down the street. There's another one over there. I see one over there, and I could see one over there. It's like I could see them everywhere. I never saw them before. Now all of a sudden, I can see them all the time. When we are in denial about our own situation, it's really weird and uncanny how we often can see more clearly other people doing the same thing that we're denying. It's like it becomes even more accentuated. Like, we can see it even greater. How is David's response to the story Nathan came to him? Nathan's like, buddy, this guy stole the rich guy stole the poor guy's lamb. And the lamb was awesome to the poor guy. David's like, kill the guy. David's, what is he doing? He stole the poor man's wife, killed him. We live in denial a lot. And we need to be willing to recognize that when we start seeing and being critical of other people in certain areas, we might actually want to start looking in the mirror back at that. It might be a good sign for us to see. Maybe that's something I'm wrestling with. Maybe I'm wrestling with that. Now, here's some good things to remember, okay? Those are the negatives. So here's some good things to remember. So you want to write these down, okay? One of the greatest things to remember is this. God is the giver of good gifts. Can we say this together? God is the giver of good gifts. One more time. We need to hear this and we need to remember this. Ready? God is the giver of good gifts. We have been given so much good by the Father. Now, some of us, in our lives, we've had people abuse us, people take advantage of, people hurt us, and we think, well, God didn't give me good gifts, but you're sitting in this room today. Right here, you're listening online. It means you have access to technology and resources. You've been given so much. You wouldn't be listening to me this morning. And here David was in his situation. God had made him king of the entire nation. How many think that's a pretty good deal? And he gave him all kinds of stuff. And in fact, he goes on to say, I would have given you more if you would have asked me. And I find this so true with God. He is so good. I tell this story to our small group one time that I was I wrestle sometimes with sugar. Anyone have a sugar addiction? Okay, some people are bad on Coke and alcohol and stuff. I've got sugar addiction. I got to have my chocolate with sugar in it. Like that's an important fix for me. And so then I start to believe that I have to have it. Like, how many of you know I don't need it? Like, it's obvious I don't need it. Okay, but I start to believe I have to have it. And so then God does this little game with me where I go and I stop at the dollar store. I buy my 75% candy bar. I think I didn't spend that much money. It's great I have a candy bar. And then I go to a small group and someone made me something special with chocolate and sugar in it. I'm like, whoa. And what God was saying is, you didn't have to go do that. I would take care of you, even on something as small as that. Dear friend, I want you to know God is good. When he tells us here, later on in James chapter 1, in verse 16, he says, do not be deceived, my dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Dear friend, the Father loves you. He knows everything about you. He knows all of your needs. He knows exactly where you are. He knows what kind of candy bar you like, okay? He knows what you're interested in. He knows what you want to do. He knows what will satisfy you. And he is not missing your need or your want or your desire. He isn't lost on it. He didn't forget about it. He didn't put you as the number 755,031, and so now you're not important. God is valuing you. He loves you. God brought his son, and he allowed his son to die so that you might have hope and redemption and life and forgiveness. God loves you. He cares deeply for you, and he is good, and he brings you good gifts. Amen, church? Can we agree with that? We need to remember that. So maybe some of us need to go back to James chapter 1 and memorize that verse. Let's read it together again. Do not be deceived, my dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. We go on to read that passage in James. It goes on to talk about how God doesn't show favoritism. He doesn't have favorites. He actually he's gonna bless you the same way he blesses me. The same measure he loves you, the same measure he loves me. He doesn't have a better love for Billy Graham, who now is with him, than he does with you or me. He loves you, he loves me, and he's good. Amen? And we need to start learning to be satisfied with what God has given us. We live in a culture where the media, the advertisements are in everything you do, from every possible angle. You won't be happy unless you buy this. You fill in the blank, right? It's got to be an iPhone, iPod, gadget, computer. Got to have a certain heel, a certain Gucci bag. If you don't have it, you won't be happy. Well, how about what God gives you can satisfy you? Can we just raise our hand in agreement here? What God gives me will satisfy me. Church, can we just acknowledge, can we kind of react and respond? What God gives me will satisfy me, and we have to go there. Because otherwise we have false beliefs, and then we start looking around, and we don't go out to battle when we're supposed to go out to battle. We start to become dissatisfied, and we think we don't have enough. And we look down from the castle, and we see something beautiful, and we go, I want that. And then we take it. And we don't need it. And when we take it, it destroys our lives. And then we deny it's wrong because we want to keep it. And we don't want to be held accountable. We don't have to admit that we're wrong. We don't have to actually agree that we did something wrong. And so instead of agreeing that we did something wrong, we start to destroy more and more of our lives and everyone else's life around us. Can we see that? And how many of us know, how many of us have walked down that in some way, small or big? We have, haven't we? I have many times, and I regret it. So we talk about being self-deceived and living in denial. Dear friend, remember, God is good. Here's another good thing to remember. Ready? God always provides a way out. Can we say that together? God always provides a way out. I can think of millions of sins I've done, from small to large, and I can't think of any of them where there wasn't a moment where I could have made a different decision. Now, in the moment, sometimes I would deceive myself. Well, I've already gone this far. I might as well go all the way. Anyone else have that voice in your head? Only me. I'm the only one. But you're all laughing, okay? Okay, you're all laughing because we all know, oh, since I did this much, I might as well go all the way. Well, no. You can stop right there. Right there. You can stop right there and hasten the damage and lessen the problem and show your heart towards God and come back to Him. You can. You can do that. And so we see that. We see that very clearly. Here's a verse that is a great verse to memorize. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. Many of you have memorized this verse. If you're new to church or new to Christianity, the Bible has some wonderful truths in it that help us, these promises from God, help us in those hard times. So 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, let's read it together. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Didn't we see that with David's story? Okay, so he saw, first of all, he was supposed to go to battle. He didn't do it. Okay? He saw her. Did he have to act on that? Answer? No. He calls her to the room and they do their thing. Okay? At that point, does he have to not admit that, or could he admit that then? Yes, he could. Does he have to bring Uriah back and get him drunk every night as he's liquoring up Uriah at his table? How many think he had choices every single night? Every night he had a choice. Then Uriah comes back and he doesn't do the wrong thing, he does the right thing. You would think in the face of that, this person who actually shows character, does the right thing, you would think that would be like slap, 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 slap in the face. How many think he'd be like totally like, oh, kill me now, God, because this guy's good and I'm evil, right? But no. David goes, okay, go back to war, you dummy. You're supposed to sleep with your wife, you idiot. And go back there, and you go to war, and then now he calls his general up. Hey, Joab, I want you to go and bring the army over there, and once they get close to the wall, pull back and let him die. Did he have a choice? When he was talking to Joab, how many of you think he had a choice? And again he had choices. But he didn't make those choices. And so now he sits in his sin and his denial and his false belief. Everyone knows what's going on. And Nathan the prophet comes and talks to him. Here's another point you may not like very much, but it's true. Forgiveness. You writing this down? Forgiveness does not mean there is no consequence. Forgiveness does not mean there is no consequence. We had an awesome godly family that was here before, and they moved on, and the husband wrestled with gambling. And one time he comes back, he comes to me and says, Pastor Phil, I'm just struggling, but I just spent our entire savings account, and we have no money for groceries. I said, well, God will forgive you, but I don't know how to help you with your consequence. I can buy you some groceries, but I can't maybe pay your mortgage and your car bill, and maybe I can't do all those things for you. And not because I don't love you, but one, I'm not independently wealthy, and two, guess who made choices, right? And that difficult place where we kind of walk through that together with him and his wife, it's like all of a sudden he's like, I think I need to change this behavior. How many realize that sometimes those negative consequences that are present actually are really helpful? As much as they're painful, they're helpful. And they remain. We can be forgiven, but there will be consequences to choices. We can be maybe saved from going to hell and God can forgive us, but if I did something that cost something, then that cost is still remaining, whatever that is. And we see that pretty clearly in the story. I don't want to bear that out too much more, but you can go ahead and read verses 11 through 14. You can see pretty clearly that point is pretty clear in the story. Alongside of that is the next point. Pain can be our friend. Pain can be our friend. God put pain, physical and emotional pain, as indicators for us. In fact, when I get closer and closer to a stove and it starts to burn me, I'm really glad he gave me pain receptors. How about you? Because if I didn't have any pain receptors, I would keep going and burn my finger off without even knowing it. But it's okay, I'll stay here. But what I see now is that God's given us pain so that we can start to feel like that's wrong. Don't do that. Don't go there. He's given us emotional pain in relationships. He's saying, that's wrong. Don't go there. He's given us pain actually as a helpful thing. Now, obviously, pain can be terrible, and I'm not talking about all pain, but pain can be our friend. There's a website that helps people walk through addictions, and it's called Living Free, and David Batty writes this: the hard path to breaking delusion. When we choose to ignore God's truth, we send ourselves down the path of delusion and experience the painful consequences of those choices. The longer we live with delusion, the more pain we will experience. Pain can become the power that helps break the delusion, and the truth is, pain is our friend, and it can break through our false beliefs and bring us face to face with the truth. How many people have you seen look back at their marriages when there was a difficult point, and because it got to rock bottom, they made some different choices, and now they're in a better place? How many people have you seen with alcohol or drug addiction or some type of issue where they had a lot of pain, and that's what kind of woke them up to say, okay, I need to... How many of you have come to the Lord Jesus Christ because you were at the bottom of something, and now you needed help, and God met you there, and you came? Pain can be your friend. Pain can be your helper. Pain is not necessarily your enemy. 2 more points and we're done. The next point is this: restoration happens in community. Can you say that with me? Restoration happens in community. So what David Batty would say on this is, we need to give permission to at least one trusted person to hold us accountable and confront us when they see us living with a false belief. How many of us want to live with false beliefs? We don't really want to do that, do we? But how many of us know that we have many times lived with false beliefs? And if someone would have loved us enough to told us, that the broccoli was sitting right here in my tooth, when I was talking to people, just telling us, that's why we have these little codes like XYZPDQ. We have these things to help people with simple things, but there are bigger things in life, right? We need to recognize that we need community to help us. We need other people to confront us, to tell us. We need to be careful and read the Bible and discover God's truth and see how it relates to the problems we are facing today. David turned because God sent Nathan to talk to him. How many of you are glad we can look at the Bible story and see David, who's called a man after God's own heart, turn back to God? How many are glad to see that? Because it's a testimony back to us that we can turn back to God too. But David turned. There were negative situations, but God used a person in David's life. And dear friend, if you want to not live in denial, then you can't live alone. A lot of us live alone because we don't want to deal with anybody else, and part of why we don't want to deal with anybody else is because not only are they hard to be with, because people cost us something, they all do, but they also confront us about things that we need to change, and I don't want to change, and so I'm going to live alone. Community is where we can start to grow and learn to be together and to do the right thing together and move together. And so Nathan confronted David, and maybe you need to have somebody in your life that can help you make right choices, not because they're bossy or because they're judgmental, but because they love and they care about you. The last point is simply this. Repentance is key. Can we say that? Repentance is key. One more time. Repentance is key. Until we acknowledge what is wrong and change, we are still in denial. I'm driving this way. Oh, yeah, the sign says another 10 miles to the wrong location. Let's keep going. How many think that's a good idea? How many think I'm a complete fool when I was doing that? Okay? You just say it. It's true. Okay? I was. And so here I was. I was going in the wrong direction, going the wrong way. And then all of these signs are telling me, no, no, no. And then finally the road sign said, going the wrong way. Well, I can keep going. But that's completely ludicrous. Dear friend, I don't know where you're at this morning. But if you don't change the way you think, if you don't change your mind, if you don't acknowledge that what you're doing is wrong, that you need to go a different way, if we don't acknowledge, if Beth and I don't acknowledge that, yes, she's not healthy, there is cancer, if I don't acknowledge that, then we're not going to take the right steps to go forward. Agreed? Agreed? If you are here this morning and you're saying, I've known about God my whole life, but I've never turned my life over to him and said, I will follow you, well, then you're living in denial that he's actually God. Because if he's God, then I need to surrender my life to him, not to myself. Living in truth means I turn to him. The good thing is God will forgive you. He'll help you. In fact, what we see in Scripture is as we repent, as we turn, God's heart is amazingly gracious and wonderful. Go read the book of Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. You see these evil, terrible kings doing stupid stuff, killing lots of people, and they turn back to God, and God says, mercy. Every time, mercy. Now, there are still consequences. They didn't get everything back, but there's mercy. My dear friend, if you're sitting here saying, I can't turn from what I'm doing, I kind of know I'm doing the wrong thing, but I'm afraid of the consequences, I'm telling you there are more consequences from not turning than turning. Amen, church? There are more consequences from not turning than turning. And so today is a day of a turning point for some of us in this room this morning. Some of us need to say, God, I will follow you. Some of us need to say, I'll stop looking at pornography. Some of us need to say, I'll stop sexting that person who I don't really have a relationship with, but I feel empty in my marriage, and so I'm going to go outside my marriage and do this. I got to stop going to alcohol. I got to stop doing whatever this thing is. It's wrong. I need to stop living in denial like, oh, I got this under control. You don't. You don't. And you need to know that God loves you, and his way is good, and he's gracious, and if we turn back to him, he will lovingly show grace to us. Amen? And so we see this. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. You know this verse, many of you do. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn away from their wicked ways. Can we read this together? Then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Dear friend, when we turn, God meets us there with his grace, with his mercy, and with his love. We see this in the story. We see this throughout all of humankind. We see this throughout history. We know it's true. We serve a great and gracious God. Let's pray.